Look, it's a great pleasure for all of us to be in Carlow. I think ye are famous for your strong tradition of resistance and fighting, and that's very good. It's always very welcome, but it's much better to win. And I think for all of us, maybe we've been through too many battles where the fight has been good, it's been all-consuming, but sadly we haven't been on the winning side all that often. And maybe it's because of that, and because the establishment has got away with the vicious onslaught on the living conditions of ordinary people, that they got a little bit complacent and thought that Paddy and Patricia were going to suck up everything, that we were going to be the best little country or people that they could exploit forever, until now. Because things have changed over the issue of water, no question or doubt about it. I think we'd have to say that we finally found the straw that everybody talks about that's going to break the camel's back, and it's been found in terms of the imposition of water charges, because the government and their friends in the media can do what they like to talk this down. The only people they're really convincing or trying to convince is themselves, because anybody who's been involved in the movement knows, anybody who was there on Saturday knows, the resistance to water charges isn't a movement that's on the way. It isn't a movement that's in decline. It actually represents a people who are getting more and more emboldened as each stage goes on. And that is the absolute and utter reality of it. In some ways, if you like, people are off their knees now and loving it, because once you start looking at things from a different point of view, everything seems different. And I think the one thing that Enda Kenny did get right, and it's probably the only thing in the record of his government, is that this isn't just about water. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's got the response that it's got. Because the reason why people are standing up now, it's on the backs of everything else where they did succeed in beating us. It's the backs of years of grinding cutbacks foisted onto ordinary people, the stealth charges that Mick talked about, where we have the highest indirect taxation on Europe, which means the poorest people actually pay the most. That's our official government policy in this state. Less than half the population have a wage of €27,000 per year. Less than half. 1.7 million people with less than €100 to live on at the end of a month. And I think 500,000 people have nothing after their bills are paid for. And yet the government stand up and tell us that we've turned a corner, that things are on the mend. But we know from our experiences of people that behind many a respectable door, there are people who are going through hell, who are sick of just managing, of the constant drudgery. Maybe they're not going to lose their house, but it's a constant drudge from one bill to the next, not seeing any end in sight. And that's not living, that's enduring. And people have quite simply had enough. And they've used the issue of water to make a stand around that. It really was the last straw, if you like, because nobody believes the government that this is about the water infrastructure and upgrading the system. I mean, seriously, the lads have dealt with that point. You don't need to set up a giant white elephant like Irish Water to deal with the problem of our water infrastructure. All you need is to put in money to invest and fix the leaks and retrofit people's houses to conserve energy and so on. And we don't say that lightly. That's what's been done. Where did the water that we've had in this state for decades, when the country had less money, come from? It came from public investment. And in the 80s and 90s, if you take the area of South Dublin County Council, for example, they succeeded in getting the water leakage rates down from about 40% to around 22%, which is almost best practice, because they were given the money to do so. So that's all that's needed. You don't need to waste hundreds of millions of euros in setting up Irish Water to do that. So why are they doing it? And the only reason why they're doing it, as the lads have pointed out, is that they ultimately want to privatise our service. And water is the new gold, not just in Ireland, but internationally as well. Ye know that in Bolivia, the government moved to actually stop people collecting rainwater. They tried to put a levy on that because they know that they can profit from it. And the experience of all of the international companies around the world show that that is what is going on here. They see it because it's a necessity for human life, that they can profit from it at the expense of ordinary citizens. And that's why we have, in the heart of the beast of international capitalism, in the American US itself, that people in Detroit are getting their water cut off. It's absolutely incredible state of affairs. And it is correct that behind it are the vested interests of Dennis O'Brien, big money backer of Fine Gael and the government, and owner of most of the media establishment. So that's what's really behind this. And that's pretty scary when you think about it. And it's certainly something worth fighting to stop when you know what's going to happen if we don't. And I think that's why we've seen an unprecedented movement of people power. But these clowns don't get that. They try to talk themselves out that it's going to be okay. They'll be able to bully their way through with the Irish people, but it's not going to work. They started off on what's in store for us now. If it wasn't bad enough listening to the government, but Irish Water now are embarking on a €650,000 advertising campaign to tell us all that water costs money and it needs to be treated. Over a massive amount of money being spent on that. We know that it costs money to treat water. It's like all public services. We've paid for it through our central taxation. And the fact that the government has chosen to take our taxes and divert that to pay the debts of bankers and bondholders is not a fault of us. Why the hell would we pay twice when they've chosen to squander our money elsewhere? And we talk about paying twice, but in actual fact it isn't paying twice at all. Because when they abolished water charges in the mid-1990s, they did, as John said, decide then to ring-fence all of the money from motor taxation and give that to the local authorities. So we've paid for that as well. Our property tax, which they extorted out of us, again supposed to be enhancing local services, hundreds of millions transferred into the pockets of Irish Water to set it up. So again, we've paid 3 times, and they say, no, but we need Irish Water because we need to be able to borrow on that money. And as Mick says, who the hell is going to pay that money back? We'll be paying back 4 times then if they get away with it. So that is really the agenda behind this situation. And we have a responsibility to ourselves and our children to say water is a human right. Access to it should be on the basis of need and not ability to pay. And that is really something worth fighting for. And we don't need meters to help us deal with that situation. I mean, what an absolute insult. What person goes out of their house in the morning and says, you know what, Shaggot, I couldn't be bothered. I think I'll leave the taps running for the day because I couldn't be arsed. No one behaves like that. More careful than we are. Our children are great educators of us in the schools now. They teach you, turn the taps off when you're brushing your teeth, don't be wasting water, and that's a good thing. But to be honest with you, most of the wastage of water in our houses is because of the way those houses were designed. And half of the houses in the state were developed after the water charges were abolished the last time. And yet during that they didn't make it compulsory to have dual flush toilets, to have rainwater harvesting where you could reuse a lot of the water. And let's face it, we're in the best country in the world for conditions of rain and rain harvesting, and there's not a single government building that even has rainwater harvesting on it. So if these people were serious about conservation, those would be the measures that they are imposing. And we should remember as well, when they talk about improving the supply, domestic water supply is only 16% of the overall supply. Conservation of water, all international studies shows that maybe by forcing us all to be a bit careful, if you put in a meter, best practice shows you might save 10%. But you're only saving 10% of 16%, which is not even 2% of the overall water supply, whereas we're able to show that the county councils in the past, when they got the money, were able to bring double-figure benefits in order to save water supply there. So this is an absolute con job. There's no basis for the installation of water meters, which are costing hundreds of millions of taxpayers' money. The only reason they make sense is to isolate the supply, assign it to you, so that they can privatise it in the future. Very, very dangerous, and this absolutely shows the reason why the people who are out stopping the installation of water meters have the right idea. This is a necessity in order to frustrate the plans to privatise our Irish water supply. So I think that is a really important point to make. I think the other con that they come up with, that, well, look, we haven't really got the money here. We can't, as a government, borrow the money because we're borrowing so much other money. So we need to set up this company so we can borrow off the books. Now, apart from the fact that it'll be Paddy and Patricia who will be paying for the borrowings off the books or on the books, we have to ask, well, why haven't they got the money for that? Let's look at that. Well, it's for a couple of reasons. I mean, the PricewaterhouseCoopers scenario says that the best borrowing they'll be able to do next year is in the tune of about 600 million for water. That's a pittance, to be honest. That is not enough for what our water infrastructure needs. But let's take that supply. Well, that is a fraction of the 8 billion of our taxpayers' money that they're paying in interest on the national debt. It's about an equivalent of the amount that they wrote off in the budget before Christmas to the tops of Irish society. The wealthy people benefit to the tune of that amount of money. Why didn't they go after them and ask them to pay it if they were so worried about getting the money for their water supply? Instead, you have a bizarre scenario where they allow the wealthy at the tops of society tax breaks, and the money that those people save in not paying tax if they've been taxed appropriately, they use to invest in the financial markets. And who comes and borrows the money? The government borrows it back. So off the same people that they gave the savings to in the first place, and we're the ones who have to pay that in the double. It's an absolutely ridiculous scenario. Now look, in some ways when we're at these meetings, we're in a kind of a luxury. At previous campaigns we had to battle with people, give you confidence as to how we could win this fight. This is a different campaign, because I think everybody knows we can smell victory on this one. It's nearly there, but it's not there yet. And that's what the purpose of this meeting is. It's not about giving you the confidence. You can feel the confidence because you've been on the demos side by side, ordinary, decent people who for the first time are getting a pride that they've stood up to this rotten government and have a bit of dignity and self-respect about themselves. The issue really is, how do we win it? And I think we should say that despite what you read in the papers, which I know ye look like a bright bunch, you're not going to be conned by that, but that ye have been, the media are talking a talk that has no relationship with the reality of anybody who lives in this country, pays bills in this country, or anybody who's been involved in the anti-water charges campaign, because this movement has actually got stronger. If you think back on it, last summer, I think it probably happened in Carlow, sadly it happened in the area where I'm a TD as well, in North County Dublin, they got away with the installation of a lot of water meters because people didn't realise it and they didn't understand it. Yes. That would not happen anywhere now. In other parts of my constituency now, they're setting up, there's camps sitting out, or people sitting out all morning, coffee, sandwiches, people setting up cameras to watch out for the water meters, and these wouldn't be hardline communities or anything. These are generally quite okay communities where they wouldn't be expecting any trouble, but it just goes to show what a change it makes. Less than 6 months ago, a demo of 20,000 people would have been considered astronomical. Now 50, 60, 70,000 is kind of nearly expected. They say, oh, if you don't get 50,000, that'll be a disappointment, because hundreds of thousands of people have mobilised on this issue, and that is the reality of it. And really all we have to do, in some ways, is to hold our nerve and hold firm on this. So in some ways, I think people kind of know that. So we're at a kind of a peculiar juncture. We had a very good demonstration the other day. The bills haven't come out yet. I think most people are quite happy that they know what to do, because the idea that those hundreds of thousands of people have gone out and demonstrated and then are going to say, okay, I better pay it now. It's just not going to happen. Of course they're not going to pay it. And non-payment is a plank on this. And the reason why fighting pays, if you like, and I'll just make a couple of brief points on this, is let's look back to where we were. You know, they were looking for an average of 500 euros from every household. And that's ultimately where they want to go to. Again, it's not that they've learned the error of the ways now and they've kind of said, oh, we better not. It's just they know they're not going to get away with that. So they're reducing it in order to try and hook people in with the new rate that if you register and sign up and you're a one adult household, it'll be €160, and if you're two or more, it'll be €260, but you can apply to get the €100 water conservation grant back. Now, of course, it's not a water conservation grant because it's a flat charge, so you can go out and leave your taps running and you will still pay the same. It is obviously just a sweetener. And we used to joke at the meetings at the start saying, look at lads, they'll be paying us to sign up to this, but the reality is they are, because they're giving that €100 to people who won't have to pay anything, and therefore let the penny drop. Why do you think there's people who've signed up to register with Irish Water? Well, a couple of 100,000 of them are people who don't have actually any bills to pay. They're people who are just going to get a free €100 in it. There are other people in that list who signed it out as Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and all the rest, and said you can shove your water bill wherever you like. They've all been included in the figures as well. And we know as well that there were many people who signed up and filled out the forms in the early days. It's sort of a national habit that people have of paying their bills. That's not a problem at all. If you've signed up, and we've met many people at these meetings who've done that, don't worry about it. The only difference for you, if you've registered, and me who hasn't registered, is that you'll be not paying a lower bill than I'll be not paying. But a percentage of zero is still zero. Not a problem. If we don't pay? Well, actually, absolutely nothing. We have everything to gain and nothing to lose by not paying. Because as Mick said, this time round, they can't deduct us from our wages. They can't do that because ultimately it would destroy the direction in which they want to go. When we started out on this battle, they could lower the pressure of your water. Now they can't lower the pressure of your water, so your water supply is absolutely secure. They talk about changing the law if you're a tenant in a property, whereby they want to bring in a system whereby if you're a tenant and you don't pay, they're trying to encourage the landlords to give over your name, that if you haven't paid, the landlord will legally be obligated to deduct the water charges from your deposit. And if you're a tenant of a county council, then the county council will be ordered to take that money from you if your debt remains unpaid after a year. Now that is a big threat. It's absolutely appalling to link this to someone's home, given the background of the massive housing crisis and homelessness that we have at the moment. But the first thing to say about that is not the situation now. In order for them to do that, they'll have to move legislation to do that. And we will give them hell on earth. And people will absolutely target them to not allow that to happen. And I think we're near enough to an election to make that quite difficult. But even if they get away with it, it won't work for them. Because the local authorities find it difficult enough anyway. Often when they're upping the money to try and squeeze that money out of tenants, they don't want that scenario either. So it's not in anybody's interest. I believe, although I didn't hear, I try and preserve my sanity by not listening to the news and not reading newspapers. I find you're generally happier if you do that. So I didn't hear the reports this morning, but one of the lads was saying outside that they're talking, Alan Kelly is on some new threats, that he's going to do this and he's going to do that. Like most, and they who do the talking like that generally don't deliver. Look, it's absolute hot air and rubbish. At the moment, the only thing that will happen to you if you don't pay is that next April, if you are registered and you're an adult household, you will be, if you like, a penalty of €30, that they'll begin to talk to you about how you might pay that as well. But if you're not paying the 160, you're not obviously going to pay the 30 or the 60 either. So that's the only thing there. The critical thing about that is that April 2016 has one major event which absolutely has to happen before that, and that is the general election. So it is going to be absolutely winnable that we could have a situation even where the penalties do not apply. So I think the message that we want to say tonight is, what will win this is critically, number one, above all else, a campaign of non-payment and civil disobedience that makes this tax uncollectible. Because then it's not worth their while. If they get away with it and the money comes in, it doesn't matter who's in the next government, they will keep it there. And the tendency will be, the way it's shaping up at the moment, we might have a government of all of our right-wing friends even who might even keep it there. So look, we don't know. We can't rely on a general election. But it is very important that you use the general election, that you use the by-election that you have the advantage of here, and all of these other issues to make sure, A, that the candidates who are opposed to water charges and who have the abolition of water charges at the centre of their agenda are supported, and that every government candidate who knocks at your door is met and told, listen, you're not getting my support. I voted for you the last time. I used to think you were great, but I don't now because of the water issue. That is a powerful tool. Political pressure does pay. I know they talk on the media, and you hear them on the media rubbishing people and talking people down. They don't really think that. Already these government backbenchers are starting to eat each other alive in the scramble, knowing that half them are going to lose out, and all they care about is which one of them is going to hang on. So they'll sell their granny if they want to do that. So they are under pressure. To use the election, but it doesn't riot that, because, you know, let's face it, the poll tax got rid of Thatcher. It absolutely did. We would like the water charges to get rid of Kenny, dear God. That would be lovely, but look, while that is our goal, we can't, we're not just waiting for that, right? So the key thing now, and what we want of people tonight, is to get involved with the local campaign here if you haven't already been involved with it. Because we do want to go out and build non-payment, knock on doors and so on. And the last point I'll make is, it's a quote that I came across that I thought was really good, that sums up about this campaign. And it was from Gandhi, and he talked about how the establishment try and undermine people. And he starts off and he said, well, first they ignore you. That's the first tactic. Well, we know that one. We've seen that. They're still actually keeping that tactic because RTE and the media think that we don't exist. Then they laugh at you. Well, we've seen that too. The disgusting attempts to characterise people as sinister fringes, as lunatic elements, as mad, as laughable or whatever. They're trying to do that. But we know that that's not true. Then they fight you. That's the next tactic. We've seen that in the insidious moves to use on Garda Síochána, to criminalise people, to put people in jail, to arrest 37 people in Tallaght just because a government minister gets held up in a car for 2 hours. I mean, seriously, you should go to South America or Italy or France or something and see what a real protest is like. I mean, seriously, it's pathetic stuff, it really is. But it shows, what does it show? It really shows us who are the ones who are afraid. They are fighting us because they're losing and they're afraid. And that's where Gandhi ends up with. Because after they do that, then you win. And that's the prize that's in front of us. So I'm really encouraging people. In some ways, we're in a kind of a nice place. We're not under too much pressure. All we need to do is know that when the bills come out, we don't have to pay. We'll go on the next march. We'll use the by-election to stuff it into them and hopefully to get a blow there. And all of that is very good. But we need to do more. We need to go out and convince the ones who are maybe not as confident as us, who are not as sure, which is why you need to have campaigns, and I really would encourage everybody to get involved with the lads here tonight.